There were no cameras, no prodded family interviews. Only a courthouse surrounded by winter gray and drenched in quiet. In it, the benches were filled with those who had at one time referred to themselves as a family, Christine serene but tight, lipped Janelle as inscrutable as ever, Robyn stiff and aloof, and Meri, who had taken the far corner of the second row, shoulders squared, heart heavy. Cody sat alone at the defense table, pen grasped in his hand, scribbling garbage on a yellow pad, as if practicing an apology he would never give in front of him. Christine's lawyer stacked a small pile of papers. Nothing flashy, just enough heft to imply truth was going to be used as a weapon. The judge came in without fanfare, already looking exhausted. "Before we start the day's motions," he said, pushing his glasses up. "We've had a late filing," he addressed Meri. "Miss Brown, I understand you have something to say." The courtroom shifted. Even Cody looked up, eyebrows furrowing. Meri rose slowly, each muscle slow and deliberated, as if every step to the witness stand cost her something. And when she stood in the middle of the courtroom, she did not request to speak. She simply did. "I was quiet when Christine left. I was quiet when Janelle walked. But today, I am finished keeping Cody's secrets." Christine remained unfazed. Janelle stared ahead, but Robyn's fingers moved. "Your Honor," Meri went on, voice firm, "I am not here to fight over money. I am here to voice the children he disowned the instant their mothers disobeyed." Cody's lips parted, then closed. The room stood still, not in disarray, but in starkness. For what Meri had just spoken wasn't merely about him, it was a statement. Of war, of remembrance, of something long forgotten and now fighting to emerge. "He didn't just disown the wives," Meri said. "He renounced the children who had the temerity to love their mothers." The judge waved her on, and in that way, the tale Meri promised she'd bury with her died its first death, against a backdrop of calm, systematic revelation, one file, one name. One abandoned child at a time. Meri's tone did not change. It didn't have to. Each syllable struck with the force of a nail driven home into a silent coffin. "It started with Leon," she said, pausing for only half a breath. "The first to question, the first to be erased." At the defense table, Cody stiffened, his hand frozen over the yellow pad. He didn't understand at first. He thought if he just waited, you'd come around. That perhaps if he didn't talk so much about Christine, about Robyn, about the things he noticed that didn't add up, perhaps you'd still view him as your child. The judge's head cocked. Robyn sat now forward, eyes fixed on Meri, but still expressionless. "But Cody didn't show," Meri went on. "He didn't call Leon by name anymore, didn't respond to texts, said he needed space when all Leon wanted was love." She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a folded note. "Leon gave me this the day they moved away. It's not long." She unfolded it with care. "It says, if I'm not enough to be claimed, then at least let me be remembered." The room didn't gasp. It didn't need to. The silence hung heavy enough to break glass. Christine glanced down, her fingers grazing an already open binder to a page tagged 2018. Janelle didn't budge. Cody's jaw was working. "That was the initial disowning," Meri said softly. "But there were more. When he stopped seeing Christine as his wife," Meri continued, "he began to treat her kids like strangers. Even the ones who used to refer to him as dad without hesitation. She didn't cry. That is what made it worse. There were no theatrics, no tears, just facts, raw and well-honed. The kind that didn't need emotion to inflict harm, only memory." The judge leaned back, his face altering from procedural detachment to something more akin to concern. Cody, for once, didn't cut in. But he didn't gaze at Meri either. He was gazing into the center of the courtroom, glazed eyes, lost somewhere between defiance and fear. Meri went on. "Then Leon, then Gwendolyn, and then Peden. Each of the children who dared to tell their truth simply disappeared from his life, one by one. She no longer required notes. Memory served her just fine." Gwendolyn raised a question over dinner, just one. She questioned why Robyn received a new vehicle while Christine had to sell furniture to finance Isabel's surgery. Cody left early that evening, and 2 days after that, Gwendolyn's calls no longer came through. Christine's lips pressed together, but she didn't lift her head. She already knew. He called it boundaries, she said. Said he needed to draw away from toxicity. But what he actually meant, Meri continued, was if you don't choose me, I choose to erase you. The room changed again, a heaviness in the air. Robyn finally put her head down. Her fists were knotted together in her lap. He used to say family was forever, Meri breathed, but that was before anyone spoke against him. She turned to the judge. I know this isn't a custody case. I know this isn't about legal standing, but these children, they were promised a father, and what they received was conditional love disguised in religious terms. Her voice broke, only once, but she quickly regained it, and when Christine walked out, he didn't just become enraged with her. He drew up a list of which children would suffer until she returned. They didn't betray him, Meri said. They just wouldn't leave their mother, and that was enough for him to close the door on their names. The judge drew a deep breath. Miss Brown, do you have evidence to back this up? She nodded, and slowly retrieved a manila envelope from her purse. It is all here, text messages, screenshots, letters, conversations he thought would never be out of his phone. The courtroom wasn't surprised anymore. They were getting comfortable because this was not a storm. This was the serene autopsy of a man's reputation, one child at a time. Meri made her way back to her seat slowly, her face a mask as the judge read over the contents of the envelope she'd surrendered. The tension in the courtroom didn't shatter. It merely shifted. Because now everyone was looking at Christine. She hadn't spoken yet. But every eye in the room knew that the binder in front of her wasn't merely for show. Christine closed her eyes briefly, then rose to her feet. Her lawyer nodded quietly, giving her room to move forward. She approached the stand with the same resolute determination she'd worn leaving the marriage. But this wasn't about divorce anymore. This was about harm. What Meri said is true, Christine started. But it's not the whole story. Cody shifted slightly. Robyn didn't move at all. I brought receipts today, Your Honor. Not just bank transfers and emails, but the kind of receipts that show a man doesn't just withhold money. He withholds love. He makes it conditional. She opened the binder. The tabs were color-coded, the pages were thick. This, she said, gesturing to a part of the page marked 2020, is a copy of a voicemail that Cody sent Isabel the week she had back surgery. He hadn't phoned in 3 weeks. This was the message. Tell your mom I'll talk to you when she decides to stop acting like a child. A silence ran through the room. Janelle's eyes drilled holes in the desk in front of her. She cried for hours, Christine continued. Not because he wasn't there, but because even when he pretended to show up, it was through a threat. She flipped the page. Here's another message, this time to Mickelty. He told her, Don't call me until your loyalty is clear. I'm not here to be a part-time father. Christine's voice didn't rise. It got quieter. That was worse. These aren't bad parent moments. They're proof of something deeper. That to Cody, love is a commodity, and if you don't play by the rules, he shuts off the supply. He didn't leave his kids behind, Christine insisted. He used them as pawns, and when they didn't play their part, he dumped them like bad investments. The judge didn't say anything yet. He was still reading the transcript. And in that silence, Cody's empire, the one founded on performance, control, and quiet, assumed another evident fracture. Christine didn't stop. Not to inhale, not to look at the room for responses. She had waited decades for that moment, not for revenge, but for liberation. The sort that only arrives when the truth is at last noisier than the lies. She flipped through to the next page in the binder. This one was colored red. This email, she said, wasn't sent to me. It was forwarded by mistake. She held up a printed version, encased in a plastic sleeve. It is from Cody to our XTLC rep. Dated the 18th of March, 2021. Subject line, Managing the Fallout. Robyn's head slowly rotated. Cody stopped writing. He wrote, and I quote, I need to restructure the family narrative before Christine's exit causes reputational damage. The children are hot-headed and dramatic. The less they are seen, the purer our image remains. Christine paused, then went on. He wasn't concerned about the children. He was concerned about the brand, about appearances, about keeping up the appearance of a cohesive home as he covertly destroyed it behind the scenes. She turned the page. The second paragraph is even more deplorable. He writes, Leon has become unpredictable. Gwendolyn will not play ball. I think we need to minimize their exposure and advance Robyn's family as the stable face of the Browns. This time, gasps, not boisterous, but genuine. The kind of catch people lose when reality hits harder than anticipated. Meri sat still, but her face told a different story. It wasn't shock. It was confirmation. Janelle glanced over for the first time since Christine started reading. They locked eyes, and for once, mutual grief was something they shared. He didn't simply disregard our children, Christine spat. He attempted to remove them from the narrative altogether, like they were never a consideration unless they grinned on television. The judge spoke at last. Do you have proof of this document? Christine nodded. The TLC representative responded, and that email is included in their file. She handed over the reply. One sentence was underlined. Understood. We'll adjust the upcoming episode schedule accordingly. The judge sat back. Slowly, like the full weight of what he'd just heard was beginning to settle in his bones. Cody still didn't look up. But his silence. Undefined that said enough. For an instant, the courtroom held its breath. Christine headed back to her seat, the binder snapped shut but not abandoned. It now lay like a loaded gun on the table. That was when Janelle rose, quietly, serenely, but with an expression that warned that this wasn't improvised. She had been waiting for this. She approached with a bulging black folder, not a binder. Less dramatic, more incisive. Your Honor, she stated, voice even. I'd like to present my own documents. These aren't emotional. These are financial. She put the folder down on the clerk's desk. Between 2015 and 2022, I paid most of the bills for the household. Mortgages, bills, grocery money, and emergency funds. I made lists, spreadsheets, and receipts. She stopped, then added, I thought I was keeping us safe, but I was simply documenting the betrayal. Cody visibly winced, Janelle went on. Every page has deposits from our TLC checks and withdrawals from Cody. Initially, they balanced, but by 2019, the deposits began to divide. The family checking account accounted for only a portion, with the rest going into private LLCs and accounts that I couldn't see. The judge leaned forward. Are these numbers verified? Yes, she said. I had them examined by a forensic accountant last month. His abstract is in the back. She turned to the final page. In 2020 alone, more than $400,000 in joint earnings was diverted. None of it reported. The majority of it, the routing slip said, went into accounts bearing Robyn's given name. Robyn nodded her head gently but said nothing. Not yet. That same year, Janelle added, my daughter asked Cody for help covering student housing. He said there wasn't enough left. He told her to be resourceful. While our kids were skipping meals and rationing gas, Robyn was buying furniture for a second home, Janelle said, and Cody signed every check. The judge motioned for the clerk to retrieve the folder. We'll review it now, he said. Take a brief recess, this court will, but in 20 minutes we will reconvene, with or without further testimony. The room roused, and Cody rocked back in his chair, arms folded, jaw clenched. Robyn finally dared to look up, eyes wide, not in shock but in seething fear. For she knew what was coming. Christine had set the groundwork emotionally. Meri had shattered the silence. But Janelle, she had brought the numbers, and numbers don't lie. The courtroom reconvened as quietly as it had drained. But now the silence wasn't thick with doubt. It was electric. Everyone had heard enough to sense the fissures beginning to open beneath the smooth floorboards of Kody Brown's father, of the disguise. But no one was prepared for what came next. The judge came in, folder clutched to his side, spectacles slipping down the bridge of his nose. He cleared his throat. Miss Brown, he said, looking over at Janelle, your financial records are thorough. Verified transactions, confirmed account names. This ledger corroborates the earlier testimony by Miss Christine Brown of secret reallocations of joint family income. He then shifted toward Cody. Mr. Brown, would you care to respond before we go any further? Cody rose. Slowly, cautiously, but the fury seething beneath his skin undermined his control. This whole proceeding is a circus, he started. His tone boomed through the courtroom, condescending and desperate all at once. None of them cared about structure, about unity. They left. They revolted. And now they're trying to cast me as some sort of villain because I held the line. Christine tensed. Meri shook her head. But Cody wasn't done. Yes, I severed relationships with some of the kids, but what was I to do? Reward disloyalty. They ganged up on me, took sides. His voice broke. I had to protect my peace. The judge didn't flinch. Did you or did you not divert $400,000 in 2020 to a private LLC without notification to your legal spouses? Cody's mouth fell open, then shut, then opened again. It was to protect us, he said, from the chaos. Robyn stared at him as if he'd just admitted to murder in broad daylight. Protect who? The judge snapped. Because if these records are to be believed, the only two people financially shielded in 2020 were you and Robyn Brown. Gasps, this time, audible. Uncontrolled. Cody's ears went bright red. They didn't comprehend the business side. He growled. I was attempting to take care of things. I was just keeping the family going. You were keeping Robyn going, Meri breathed, but loudly enough for the mic to pick it up. The judge addressed the clerk. We will now receive all documents into the record. The courtroom was no longer a courtroom. It was an archaeological site. Each layer stripped away showed another hidden truth, and they weren't finished excavating. Meri stood once more. Not by request, not by invitation, but because she recognized the time had arrived. The courtroom, still reeling from Cody's unwitting confession, turned as she waved a tiny white envelope in the air. Your Honor, she said quietly, I have one last piece of evidence. It is not an accounting document. It is not a binder. It is a series of letters. Letters the children Cody ceased communicating with. Letters he never opened. She put the envelope down on the clerk's desk with a care. There are 12. All 12 written between 2021 and 2023. From Leon, from Gwendolyn, from Gabriel, from Sabel, even from Truly. That surname lingered in the air like a blow to the body. Christine shut her eyes. These are not hate letters, Meri went on. These are pleas. Children wondering why their dad no longer came around, wondering what they had done wrong. And all of them ended the same way. I still love you, Dad. Cody shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Fingers curled into the edge of the table. The judge motioned for the bailiff to retrieve the envelope, opened the first letter, read the first line, then folded it closed and set it down. His tone was subdued. Mr. Brown, did you know about these letters? Cody said nothing. Did you ever answer them? Silence once more, until Meri breathed softly. He said not to give him emotional blackmail. Robyn exhaled sharply, not shock, but understanding. This wasn't about the money now. This was about neglect, about erasure, about the type of cruelty that doesn't bruise, but leaves holes in a child's spirit. He didn't lose his children, Meri said, her eyes blazing now. He threw them away like mail. He didn't want to bother with. The judge set the envelope aside with the financial papers. These will be included in the official record as personal testimony and character evidence. He gazed at Cody for a final moment. This isn't a divorce anymore, Mr. Brown. This is about what happens because of the way you've used silence as a punishment. Cody didn't respond, but his empire, the public legend of fatherhood, cohesion, and religious leadership, was now crumbling before all eyes, not with a bang, but with crumpled paper and shattered voices. It was Robyn who finally ended the silence, not with words but with movement, a shaky, slow climb up from her chair, hands shaking in sight as she held a file that hadn't been presented, hadn't been discussed even. Everybody's eyes went to her, not because they respected her or anything, but because they waited in dumb expectation. She moved towards the judge, looked at him, then at Meri, Christine, and Janelle. I didn't know everything, she stated, voice wavering, but I knew enough. And I remained silent because I believed I was shielding the family. I wasn't. I was shielding him. She placed the file in the bailiff's hands. I have something I tape, recorded, something I wasn't supposed to overhear, but I did. It was a telephone call. Last March. Cody went white. Robyn, he began, but the judge signaled him to be silent. Go on, he instructed her. Robyn nodded, appalled. He was on the phone with his accountant. He didn't realize I was in the room next door, he said. And I repeat, as long as I can channel it through Robyn's trust. They won't be able to track the whole amount. TLC pays. I split it. Robyn has it. That way it appears she is the dependent. Audible gasps again. Christine's hand went up to her mouth. Meri's eyes grew cold. Even Janelle seemed shocked, for the first time since this whole thing started. I approached him afterwards, Robyn whispered. He threatened to never let me say it again, that if the others knew, everything would come crashing down. She faced Christine. You were right. He didn't just sever your kids, he used me as a cover-up. And I let him. He constructed the trust in my name, Robyn confessed, gagging on the words. But I do see now, he never trusted anyone other than himself. The judge waved to the clerk. Accept the recording and start transcription immediately. The nature of these proceedings is altered by this evidence. Cody jumped up. You can't use that. She didn't have the right. Sit down, Mr. Brown, snapped the judge. Your rights are no longer the ones under review here. And for the first time, Robyn, always quiet, always loyal, sat back down not beside Cody, but beside Meri. No words, just silence. The kind that says, I'm done lying for you. The courtroom was a pressure cooker now. Every word, every breath, every piece of evidence stacking like dynamite under the crumbling legacy of Kody Brown. And just when it seemed as though nothing else was going to blow what remained of his authority, the judge spoke up, voice steady but deadly. We do have one more witness lined up, he said. One who wished to be kept anonymous until called. Cody's gaze cut over to the clerk. Robyn frowned. Christine's head crept around, her breath halted halfway out. The side door swung open and in walked Logan Brown, Cody's eldest. The same one he had referred to as his pride. The same one he hadn't had words with in close to 2 years. Gasps coursed through the courtroom, not due to Logan's appearance, but due to what his appearance signified. The son who had been quiet for so long had finally opted for quiet no longer being protection. It was complicity. Logan mounted the stand carefully, set the mic to size, and gazed directly at Cody. You used to say men lead by example, he stated, never requiring a script. But all I experienced was a man who led through fear, through threats. Through withdrawal, you made love a transaction. Cody shook his head, grumbling something under his breath. Logan did not bat an eye. When I stopped appearing on camera days, you stopped calling. When I said I wouldn't sign your new family trust, you said I'd live to regret it. I haven't, not once. The judge let him go on. You want to know what finally snapped? Logan's voice shook for the first time. You said my little brother was weak because he cried when Mom left. You informed him he was a mama's boy, and that true men suffer abandonment. You didn't raise strong men, Dad, Logan stated, staring at Cody. You raised children who needed to mend themselves from the manner you loved them. The courtroom gasped in shock. Meri closed her eyes, fists on her lap. Christine sat still, as if Logan had spoken the pain dug deepest in her heart. Janelle wiped a tear from her cheek. Undefend Robyn said nothing. Undefend Becca, 'cause nothing was left to say. Undefend that the judge didn't respond with protocol or legalese. Undefend had just nodded, almost sadly. Undefined, this court recognizes Logan Brown's testimony as first-hand witness to sustained emotional harm. Undefined the record will reflect the credibility of his statement and the corroboration from submitted evidence. Cody sat down slowly, his face hollow. Undefined for once, he had no words. Undefined not even to defend himself. The courtroom was still thick with the weight of Logan's words, when Christine stood once more, this time with trembling hands and a stare made of stone. She didn't need notes anymore. Her voice had transformed, from wounded to weaponized. Your Honor, she said, I'd like to revisit an issue that was dismissed too quickly at the start of these proceedings, indirect custody neglect. The judge nodded, solemn now. Go on. Christine moved closer to the center of the courtroom. Binder clutched in her hand but shut. She wasn't clutching documents anymore. She was grasping memory, trauma, and the sort of maternal truth that doesn't require bullet points. When I left Cody, she stated, I didn't merely leave a marriage. I left a system intended to punish love that didn't work for him. She rolled slightly, nodding toward Robyn, now fixed on her lap in shame. He informed me repeatedly that if I left, I was deciding to leave my children orphans. He said that I would cause them to lose their father by my own selfish behavior. She hesitated, and then he followed through on that threat. Christine opened a folder, not the binder, something new. It contained a printed record of each birthday, holiday, and surgery he did not attend. He quit appearing, and when the children asked him why, he told them I was keeping them from him. That is not neglect, Your Honor. That is emotional gaslighting. The judge picked up the folder. Christine's hands were quivering now, but her voice never wavered. There are also financial records, she continued. Each child was paid and agreed upon stipend from the TLC contracts. In 2021, those stipends disappeared. Not went down, disappeared. I confronted the network. They informed me Cody diverted payments to a joint production trust. He didn't just wipe his presence, Christine said. He removed their identities from the financial record, so their names didn't even exist on paper anymore. The judge looked visibly upset now. And did Mr. Brown inform you of this transfer? No, she answered. But his signature is on the authorization slip, she said. I have it here. She pushed the slip forward. It had the timestamp, the routing number, and one name under the electronic approval, Kody W. Brown. The judge gasped for breath. This court finds a pattern of sustained and intentional withdrawal, financial, emotional, and paternal. We will now address recommendations for restitution. Restitution. That word struck Cody like a bullet, because this wasn't just exposure anymore, this was justice. The courtroom was quiet, but it wasn't frozen. Feelings bubbled just below the surface: sorrow, anger, betrayal, and most of all, relief. For the first time in years, truth had been uttered not in whispered tones behind closed doors, but openly on the record, where it could not be rewritten by confessionals or controlled cuts. The judge smoothed his robe and cleared his throat. Read all testimony, documentation, financial data, and character statements presented during the course of these hearings. He looked over at Cody, whose defiance had given way years ago to something more empty and unrecognizable. Mr. Brown, what has surfaced is not so much a collapse of family relationships. It is a long-term and chronic pattern of emotional intimidation, economic manipulation, and what this court finds to be negligent abandonment of several dependents, namely your children. The words hung like heavy thunder. Christine took a deep breath. Janelle sat stock-still, her face impassive. Meri, up until this point immovable, allowed one tear to slip from her eye. Not that we can undo the past, the judge went on, but we can try to undo the harm. He addressed the clerk and spoke the decision aloud. Effective today, Mr. Brown is directed to set up pay restitution accounts on behalf of each of the 7 children whose stipends were illegally diverted or withheld. He will also come under supervised accounting for any future reality-based income stemming from family resemblance or representation. Cody slumped in his chair, lips open, breath shallow. But it wasn't finished. The judge wasn't done. In addition, any and all future appearances on promotional media, books, or contracts relating to the Sister Wives brand shall need written approval from each adult involved and legal age child. Use of names, stories, or likenesses without permission will be a violation of the court order and subject to civil sanction. That wasn't lawyer jargon. That was a gag. The years of distorting their words into profits, their tragedy into debating points, were finished. Christine closed her eyes, nodding slowly. Janelle reached over and touched her hand lightly. Even Robyn, sitting now a few feet removed from Cody, released something that was almost an apology. This courtroom did what Cody's family had been unable to accomplish in a decade. The narrator wrapped up. It forced him to confront the truth, and at last it made him pay for it. As the gavel came down, Meri moved forward first. She didn't say goodbye, she didn't glance back. She merely left the courtroom and into the sunlight, where cameras stood by, not to capture the next drama, but to see the culmination of a lengthy, agonizing period. A period when silence meant survival, and now truth was justice. Christine behind Janelle and the two of them walked away not as ex-wives, but as women who had finally made the world hear.